My name, folks, is Rich Groves, and I'm the Vice President of Professional Affairs for the Next Media Group. And we're here tonight to talk to you about part 2 in our 4-part webinar series. This one happens to focus on associateship. We know it's a key consideration for many of you who are readying for this transition. And a special thanks to our friends at Aspen Dental who provided us the educational grant that enables us to put on this presentation for you this evening. Just a quick housekeeping rule or two before we get started. You can ask questions at any time during the conversation using the chat function and using the Q&A button on your interface. I'll collect as many of those questions as we can, and once Dr. Niv has a chance to share with you some of her experiences as she was considering some of these same steps, I'll collect all those questions, and at the very end I'll tee up as many as we have a chance to address tonight. And in the meantime, want to make sure that she has an opportunity to share some of her experience. And again, a special shout to our friends at Aspen Dental for their sponsorship. And I'll let Dr. Niv take it away here as she outlines some of our objectives for this evening. Dr. Niv.
For sure. Yeah, thank you. So our key objectives tonight, you can see that there's 4 of them. First, we'll talk about any key questions that you face as an associate dentist. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself and how I kind of moved through the associateship role to more of a head dentist role and kind of walk you through my path. Then we'll kind of cover some multiple pathways that dentists have for entering the profession. Obviously, there's different ways you can join with a dental service organization, a DSO. You can do a residency, you can work for an FQHC, a nonprofit. There's multiple different ways that dentists enjoy their profession. So I'll talk a little bit about my experience with the DSO, but obviously there's different paths to entering into our profession. And then, like I said, I will detail into the DSO model a little bit more since that's the one I'm most familiar with, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. I think that it's so advantageous to have somebody who's not too far out of school. I graduated in 2016, so I'm still a very new dentist, and I think that it's a cool experience to have somebody in that transitionary stage answer questions, because I know I had so many questions as a first, second, and third, fourth year that I wish I would have asked a new dentist. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have there. Yeah, a little bit of background about myself. I was pretty heavily involved in ASDA. I was the Speaker of the House my 3rd year in dental school, and my final year I was actually the National Vice President. So I've always been involved in organized dentistry. I'm still involved in organized dentistry. I'm a member of the American Dental Association. I'm a member of some of the state and local dental components as well. So to me, it's kind of a unique role because a lot of people don't associate dentists who work with dental service organizations or support organizations as being very heavily involved in organized dentistry, but I kind of transition between both of those different worlds and try to merge them as much as I can. I did graduate in 2016, like I said, from Midwestern University in Illinois. After that, I joined with Aspen right away, and my primary reason for doing that was I felt like I had a very good grasp on dentistry when I graduated, but I wanted to really, really hone in my skills, you know, become a better quality clinician, become a little faster, learn more, you know, learn about implants, learn about more complex restorative procedures. And to me, either doing a GPR or an AEGD would be that path, or finding an option that would let me progress at the pace I wanted. So when I talked to people like Jeff Winchell and some of the other recruiters at Aspen Dental, they said, you know, listen, you get to control your schedule. So you can add as much as you want, or you don't have to do it. You can refer whatever you're comfortable with referring, or you can do whatever you're comfortable with. And so I found that I had a lot more leeway in creating the opportunities that I wanted to grow as a clinician. So if I wanted to try and take on a molar endo that seemed a little bit easier, you know, maybe 2 canals or 3 canals versus a crazy 5-canal molar somewhere, I would block out 2.5 hours of my schedule and work on that, sometimes with a mentor dentist there, or even an endodontist in the practice itself. So I felt like the DSO route was a little bit more of what I wanted because I could control the program as far as what I wanted to get better at, whether it was molar endo or implants or things like that. And I was an associate dentist for a few months and then transitioned pretty quickly to being the lead dentist. I was in Orland Park, Illinois for a pretty long time. I just moved to Pennsylvania like 3 weeks ago to an Aspen practice here, so I did do an internal transfer, but I can tell you a little bit more about that in a few upcoming slides here. So I guess we'll drive into the next slide here, which is just the definition of what a dental service organization is. And I know I keep saying support versus service, but I think either one really exemplifies what a DSO is. So a dental service or a dental support organization basically manages the business model and you manage the patient. That's the easiest way to explain it, is Aspen will take care of your managing side of things. So if you want to hire a new dental assistant, they will do the job interviews. They will put those interviewees in front of you after they vet them through and say, you know, how do you feel about this girl or this guy? Do you think that they would be a good fit for your practice? But they've already done all the initial vetting out, so you don't have to worry about that. In addition to that, they do a lot as far as promotion of new patients and things like that, so that they know that you've got a good new patient base, because that's what's going to keep your practice running. Is, of course, your recalls are important, but the more new patients you're able to bring into the practice, that's how you grow your practice. And then they, of course, focus on things like payroll and running the business. They do a really good job with helping you understand the metrics, and I feel like that's something that we didn't really get that much in dental school, is how do you run a business? I know that we've maybe had a few classes on it here and there, but once you get into the real world, it's a huge beast. I mean, some of these dental practices you'll be at are making millions of dollars a year. So how on earth do you delve into the metrics of that and understand why a business is successful or what could make it more successful, as long as you're focused on your patient care? So that's one of the things that Aspen's very, very important to Aspen and to hopefully all the dentists in the world, because that should be your primary concern, is patient care. But they really do a good job of understanding the metrics of your patient care. You know, they'll look into why your satisfaction or patient unsatisfaction ratings are the way they are. They'll give you feedback on what you're doing well for your patients, maybe what you could be doing better for your patients, things like that. They watch your wait times in the waiting room or the wait times waiting to see the doctor, things like that. So it really breaks down on a very fundamental level how you're running your practice. So that's kind of what the DSO model is you do the dentistry and they worry about everything else. So we'll go on to the next slide. I guess the point of the slide is just, if you have any questions, feel free to call them in, because I have traveled this road maybe, you know, a few steps ahead of you guys, but I'm not that far ahead of you. So I don't know if I can say I've well traveled it, but at least I'm a couple steps ahead. So if you have any questions at this point, you can call them in and I'm happy to answer anything else. So as we kind of touched on earlier, you have a lot of different options when you graduate. You can be an associate in a big group practice, a small solo practice. You can own a practice. You can do public health. You can do military dentistry, whatever. There's a ton of different choices. And so finding out which one is the best for you is sometimes a complicated thing. What I always recommend is to shadow in these different groups. I know some DSOs might not have the best reputation, but remember that every dental clinic is different, whether it's associated with a big name brand like Aspen or whether it's not. So that's something that I tell every single person, is especially if you're going into something that you're not 100% sure about because you've heard some of these misperceptions, get into the practice. See how the clinic is run. You know, are the dentists being ethical? Are the patients happy? So whatever you do, whether it's an associate in a private practice or an associate in a large group practice, get in there and see what the experience actually is for both the staff and the patients.
Okay, folks, just as you're thinking about your own trip into the profession, we want to stop and let Niv grab a quick sip of water, and at the same time, we're going to ask you, let's hear some of the thoughts you have as you're considering some of these different pathways that she was just touching on. How are you planning on entering into the profession? We're going to open a quick live poll and allow you to share some of your feedback, and we'll take a quick temperature from all of you folks as attendees tonight. Are you planning associate in solo practice, associateship in a group practice, maybe residencies calling your name, or public health academia, as Dr. Niv was just saying? Or are you at this point in your journey, are you still undecided and using opportunities like tonight to better explore those different paths that you can take? All right. Keep them coming. I know those of you on your cell phones have less control and able to participate in the poll, but those of you who are on your tablets and your desktops, your laptops, please do. I'm going to leave this open for just a few more moments and then allow Dr. Niv to continue on. Just one quick second. Okay, Dr. Niv, the show is back in your hands.
All right, thanks. What were the results of the poll? I can't see them.
Actually, the #1 result was associateship in group practice.
Oh, interesting. That's cool. All right, well, at least this is relevant for you guys, so that's good. All right, let's move on. So the top 10 questions on an associateship. So I guess the first question is, what's your business acumen? And I did kind of touch on that a little bit, where I felt like I had very low business acumen, and I can't say it's that much better now, but at least I understand the basics of running a dental practice. So here's some important questions. I'll just touch on a few of these. But thinking about where to start it or financing, things like that, like I said, Aspen does a lot of the groundwork before even coming to figure out where to build their own practices. They build every practice from the ground up, and so any Aspen practice you see was never bought out by a different owner. They pick a location based on the demographic of that population. Aspen's demographic, we kind of are in more underserved areas, so we're not in any of the really big cities, or if we are, we're in more of the suburbs where there is more of an underserved population. You're finding more of a geriatric population. I still do every facet of dentistry. I don't do just extractions and dentures. I did a molar root canal today, actually, and so I do a lot of root canals, a lot of restorative and pros. I do a lot of crowns and bridges. I'm dabbling in implants now. I have a mentor dentist who's helping me with that. So as far as, you know, where to put your practice or how to figure out which market your practice will thrive in, Aspen actually does a lot of that behind the scenes, and so that's something that I feel like is really good with Aspen, because they're not going to put a practice in a place where they feel like it might not succeed. It doesn't always happen that, you know, every practice is thriving and growing, but I think that the fact is that they've never had an Aspen office closed, and there's, I think, 600 offices or somewhere around that number now. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job figuring out where the market is good, and so you have at least some sort of security there that, you know, you're not going to be stuck in an area where you don't have any patients and you're figuring out how to pay your electric bill or pay your employees. Your second question here, moving on, is what is your access to peers and mentors? And so, like I've mentioned, having a mentor a couple times, the way that Aspen does it is when you first join, they typically pair you up with a mentor dentist. Usually you're either coming right out of school or maybe out of a year of residency or a couple-year GPR residency. And so you know a lot, but you don't know everything. And so they try and hook you up with somebody that does understand the practice of dentistry and understands the business model and things like that, so they can mentor you not only in when you get stuck and you can't get out for really hard surgical extraction. You know, you've got somebody there to kind of bail you out and show you, you know, how you can trough the bone or things like that, but also when it comes to patient satisfaction issues. You know, how do you handle somebody that's coming in and they hate their denture or they hate their partial that you made them and you don't know how to make them happy? Sometimes it's nice to have a mentor dentist there who you can talk with and say, you know, here's the situation I'm in, how would you approach this? And so I feel like the access to mentors is really strong with Aspen, because they actually pair you up with one when you start, so that you've got somebody to bounce those ideas off of. As far as having your peers, that's obviously important too. I work in a solo practice, but that's kind of my preference. I like being the only dentist in the office, because no matter what, it's on me. If the office does well, I can congratulate myself. If it does badly, there's no one else to point fingers to, you know. I like having that control and knowing that I have a lot of influence over the success of the practice. And it's not that I don't want an associate with me, but I think that when I have my own control over the practice, the way the patients are treated, the treatment plans themselves, I know for a fact every single one is in the best interest of the patient, and every single thing being done in our practice is ethical. Like, we always have a blood pressure reading on every patient. Anytime I need a medical release, my staff knows, you know, anytime they're taking a blood thinner or any sort of a medical history they might have, I make sure that it's run the way that you're taught it to be run. And so I like having that kind of control, but a lot of my friends who are at Aspen do have an associate, or they are the associate. So there's a lot of peer mentorship there, because you have a doctor you're working with that's not quite a mentor. They're not, you know, 10 or 15 years out, but they might be 2 or 3 years out. So they still might have some ideas on things that, you know, you might not know as well, but they're more of a peer than a mentorship role. The third question here, moving on to the next slide, is how do you maintain productivity? You know, I guess I'll touch on the last part of this question, where it says, how do you drive and maintain patient flow? Aspen has their own marketing and promotions. They're partnered up with NASCAR and Danica Patrick. So as far as maintaining the patient flow and things like that, I see, it's going to sound crazy, but I see anywhere from 6 to 10 new patients a day, which is pretty insane because in private practice, typically you're seeing 6 to 10 new patients probably every couple of weeks. And so for me to be seeing that many new patients a day, not recall patients, brand new patients to the office is pretty insane. But it's good because it drives the patient flow and it keeps your practice exciting. You know, every time somebody walks in with something new, you're there to help them. So I really like having a productive office and making sure that every hour of the day is spent doing something productive, whether, you know, maybe it's just a soft reline, maybe it's, you know, a single tooth extraction of somebody who's been in pain for an entire night and couldn't sleep. So I like having a productive office. My team is the same way. We like keeping ourselves busy and running at a pretty quick pace. But like I said, when you're an associate, you might be at a little bit slower pace since you do have another doctor there to bounce something off of. So if you're behind on a filling or if you had an open contact, God forbid it still happens, and you have to redo that filling right there, you have a little bit of time to swing with your other dentist there. So next question, what lifestyle is best for you? Okay, so for me, work-life balance is very, very important. I do have an after-hours call. The way it works for Aspen is if you have an emergency number, what the patient can do is, say you do a full mouth extraction and they've got some postoperative bleeding or postoperative pain, they call a call center, and that call center actually calls you with the patient's name, their question or concern, and then their phone number. So hopefully you remember them from that day or from the day before, but you're able to call them back. But it happens pretty infrequently, so one of the things some doctors do is they actually have their office manager take some of those calls. I like calling my own patients back because, I mean, imagine if you're having some sort of concern, you'd rather reach your doctor rather than a nurse or a front desk person, but it's kind of up to you with Aspen. You can take all of your after-hour calls, but if you go to sleep at 8 o'clock p.m., maybe hand it off to your office manager so that the patients still have somebody they're talking to if you're fast asleep. Next question, as far as how you'll find employment, well, I guess it's talking about the distribution of dentists and where the population is shifting through from the Northeast Sunbelt, from rural to urban areas. So I was in Chicago for a year. Like I said, I graduated in 2016 from dental school, so I was there in Chicago, in the Chicago suburbs, I should say. Like I said, Aspen's not in the main city of Chicago, it's in the suburbs, but it's about a 30-minute drive from the city, so not too bad. And I was there, it was a new practice, the practice had just opened, and I started as the head dentist there once the owner dentist moved on to the next practice. But I moved from Chicago to Hazleton, Pennsylvania, which is a pretty big transition because there are some pretty cool opportunities happening out in the Northeast. They're opening some newer offices and newer markets, and so I wanted to kind of be a part of that growth. I think that you've kind of gotten the sense that I'm independent when it comes to working, and I think that being an owner of a practice, whether it's with Aspen or a private practice, is something that is a goal of mine, and Aspen is expanding into new markets and new territories in the Northeast. So I found myself kind of drawn to this area because I think that there's more ownership opportunities out in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland areas, and even though I'm in a smaller town, much smaller town than Chicago now, I think that the transition has still been a good process for me because I know that I've got my eye kind of on a long-term goal here, and this is kind of a short-term step in order to reach that goal of ownership, like I said, whether it's with Aspen or somewhere else. So that's kind of been my transition as far as moving from Chicago to Pennsylvania.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Very important.
Thanks. Okay, cool. So question 6 is talking about the clinical focus as far as what type of procedures you're seeing, what type of patients you're seeing. I've kind of already touched on this. I do a wide array of dentistry. I'll do everything from endo to a lot of surgical extractions. I like a lot of surgery. I'll do frenectomies, alveoplasty, surgical extractions, partially impacted third molars. I'm learning how to take out full bonies. I still refer. With Aspen, typically you have a specialist come to your office once or twice a month. So we have an oral surgeon that comes to the office and an endodontist. So if it's a really complex third molar that I can't extract, or if it's a molar endo that I don't want to take on, then I'm happy to just refer it to my specialist, and the patient can actually still come to my office, and the specialist will show up on that day. So that's pretty cool for my patients. It keeps everything in-house so they don't have to drive somewhere else just in order to see a specialist. And then as far as the new patients being distributed, like I said, we do see a lot of new patients, and some people come in as a problem-focused exam. Typically, I like to do comprehensive exams on every patient, even if they have one concern, just because, one, that's what you're taught in dental school, is that you really want to try and look at the whole mouth and the whole body holistically, and not just focus on the one tooth that they're there for. But at the same time, you can't ignore, that they're in pain on that one tooth. So what I usually say is, listen, I'm here to help you on that one tooth, and we can take care of that today if I've got time. But typically, when you've got something like this going on in one tooth, there might be something else starting on the other side of your mouth. So I encourage you to do a comprehensive exam. For Aspen, depending on the state you're in, it's either $19 for a new patient exam and x-rays, or it's free. In Chicago, it was $19. Here, it's free. So it's pretty easy to coerce my patients into saying, listen, you don't have to pay a dime. Just sit through a few x-rays. We'll talk about everything going on in your mouth, and then we'll go ahead and address why you're here today. And so I try to encourage all my patients to do a comprehensive exam, because at least you're educating them on what's going on. And, God forbid they have some pathology, you're there to catch that before it turns into something that's really, really progressed at a later stage. Oh, question number 7. Oh, look at that. Well, that's relevant to me as far as relocating. It is hard, I will say that. I miss Chicago. I miss the big city, but I guess the perks here are you're an hour and a half from New York City and you're an hour from Philly. So I have yet to actually travel and venture out there, but relocating is something that if you'd asked me a year ago, I probably would have said no to. So it's an interesting phase transition even for me, because I didn't think that I would just up and move my life to the middle of Pennsylvania somewhere, but here I am. And I think that the opportunities that present themselves sometimes when you're young and have the opportunity to make these types of moves, go ahead and do it, because it might be something that hopefully, works out better for you in the future. So if you're willing to move and take some crazy chances and get into a practice where you're going to learn a lot, or you're going to have this very strong mentor that you can be with, I would encourage you to do that, because the first couple years when you're doing dentistry, as much as you learn in dental school, you don't know everything, and you learn very quickly that you don't learn everything. So when you have somebody else there, or you're in practice that, might not be in the greatest place but has the greatest people, I would definitely tell you to take that opportunity, because that's what's going to really start to shape your career, is not where you are necessarily, but who you work with and what types of experiences you're getting in the first couple transformative years of your career. So the next one, is technology important to you? Well, I sure hope it is. As far as the technology we got in Aspen practices, they are trying to bring in cone beam CBCTs to the newer practices. Not every single Aspen has a cone beam. My practice doesn't, but anytime we have an implant case and we need a cone beam x-ray, we send them over to an office that's about an hour away. So typically my patients don't mind driving to take that x-ray there. You can ask for whatever technology you want. Since I just graduated in 2016, I was trained on Wave 1 in the endodontic system. It's the Wave 1 filing system. So we didn't really typically learn very much of the traditional filing system. We learned Wave 1. So when I got to Aspen, I said, listen, I need Wave 1 because that's how I learned how to do my root canals. And they said, that's fine. So they put it in the budget and got me what I needed. I'm sure if you ask for things like a Spheric, they might have a little bit more resistance because it tends to be a much more expensive thing. But if you've got some sort of technological needs as far as, even for restorative, if you want a Garrison, or if you want a Paladent rather than using a Tafelmeyer, Aspen will let you order that within the budget. So I still tend to stick to Tafelmeyers, but anything that you want that's going to make your work better and make the patient's work better in their mouth, typically Aspen will do a good job making sure that technology gets to you. All right, next one. How important is culture? I think Aspen's pretty unique when it comes to culture. They have a lot of events they do. They've got women's vibe events. They've got young dentist events. They've got national events they do where they invite, some of the biggest owners and some of the newest associates. So it's a really cool culture that I think that Aspen's created. Bob, the CEO, Bob Fontana, really down-to-earth, easygoing guy, and he just really wants to make your life easy as a dentist. So he'll be at a lot of these events. He's very easy to talk to. He'll come up to you and say, hey, what's going on in your practice? What can I do for you? So I think that something about Aspen I really do enjoy is their culture. any dentist that you want to reach out to, they'll find you a question. Like today, my air compressor died in my office, so I had to send my last 2 patients home because I didn't have working handpieces. And so I called like 2 or 3 dentists in the area, and I don't know them that well because I just moved here. And I'm like, oh, hi, I'm the new doc in Hazleton. My office died, so could you please help me? And within 10 minutes, I had people making calls to Henry Schein, like I'll have a functional office tomorrow. And so I think the culture is just that no matter where you are, if you need help, everyone's really a family when it comes to Aspen. And I know that kind of sounds cheesy, even coming out of my mouth as I listen to that, but it really is true because I kind of felt stranded in the middle of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, but then tomorrow everything's going to be okay. And so that's something that I do really like about Aspen. I think that the culture here is a really special thing. Like I said, I really encourage you to shadow wherever you're doing an associateship, whether it's large group practice or private practice, whatever it is. Shadow and talk to the staff and see what their concerns or what their pros and cons of the office are. Even for me coming into this office, that's one of the first questions I asked because the last dentist left she just had a long commute. She had to drive like over an hour every day. So that's why she left. It's a pretty standard reason. Nothing too dramatic there. But I talked to the staff and said, why do you come to work every day? I really got to know them and figure out what they love about coming to this office and what they think could be improved. And so really, when you get into an office, know that you're the leader. Whether you're an associate or whether you're the owner, you're still a leader, and everybody in that office is going to look up to you. And so talk to the staff, get to know them, and be a leader in the office and really try and make that an environment where people want to come to work and they want to work for you. Your practice is only going to be as successful as the people working with you because you have 2 hands, but when your whole team is working together, you have, 12, 15 people working together. And so you really can accomplish amazing things for patients if your whole staff is really on board with your vision for patients, why you come to work every day, why you're there to help everyone. So I know I'm really drilling in this culture thing, but to me that's very important, is creating a successful team and being a mentor, being a leader is so, so important in building a successful practice and helping as many people as you can. And then 10, can we talk about compensation? So as far as Aspen goes, they will start you off with a daily rate. So no matter if you have a snowstorm and nobody shows up, or if you have 1,000 people show up because everybody needs an adjustment that day, you'll get a daily rate. So for an associate, it can be anywhere from about $400 to $600 per day. So no matter what, rain or shine, as long as you go to work, you'll get at least $400 a day or whatever they start you at, up to usually about $550 or $600. And then on top of that, depending on how well the office does as far as production, you actually can make a bonus. It depends on each owner. Every owner does it a little bit differently, but some owners will do about 6 to 10% for associates, and for the head dentist, it bumps up to about 16 to 20% for your bonus on top of your daily rate. So there's a pretty significant bump from the associateship to the head dentist, and of course, if you're a partner or if you're an owner, you're making quite a bit more than that. So you are always guaranteed a baseline with Aspen, and you can always make more than that depending on how your practice does. All right, so this next slide, I guess, is about new graduates being 3 times more likely to be employed in large group practices compared to grads just a decade ago. I think that that's a pretty important statistic there. It's showing kind of a change in dentistry, the field of dentistry. I'd say even 10, 15 years ago, the ideal dental practice was a private practice. And even now, I think sometimes that's the perception, but I think that, the American Dental Association, organized dentistry are really understanding that the DSO model is here to stay. It's really good for new grads because you do get that baseline pay, whether it's Aspen or Pacific Dental or whoever you're with, Heartland. Most of the time they guarantee you that base pay. Whereas when I was interviewing for private practices, not one private practice guaranteed me a base pay. Usually they told me that I would get between about 20 to 30% of collections or production, things like that. So I think, when you graduate, I graduated just a year ago, so I have, crazy amounts of loans as well, and to know that you're going to have this steady salary and I'm going to be able to pay my loans off and, put food on the table and things like that is something that's really beneficial, and I think that's what's attractive about the DSO model to new grads, because you know that no matter what, you're going to have this pretty good steady paycheck and you're going to be able to take care of the expenses and the loans that you've got going on for you. Okay, next we'll go to the common myths. Okay, so as far as it being a temporary destination, I think that depends. I think it's going to be like that no matter what practice you're in. If you're in an associateship that you don't like, even at a private practice, it might turn into a temporary destination. And so I think that's just going to vary practice to practice. But the last one, as far as unreasonable productivity requirements, like I said, maybe it's a little bit different for me because I'm the only doctor of the practice, but I never make it unreasonable for myself. You know, I'll tell my staff how long to schedule each thing. For example, one filling, I'll say schedule that for about 30 minutes. A full mouth extraction, schedule for maybe about an hour, hour and a half, depending on, you know, if it's perio-compromised or if they're all just broken teeth, but every single one is ankylosed, you know, that's going to vary. So as far as having these requirements to fulfill, I've never had that experience. Like I said, I can't talk for every single dentist who works at Aspen, but for myself personally, I've never really seen that happen because I'm the only one here, so I kind of control how some of those things go. The next slide, I guess, touches on a little bit about the realities of the DSO-supported practice as far as providing comprehensive patient care. As I said, dentist to dentist, maybe some people do it a little differently, but I do like the comprehensive dental care that we're taught in dental school. For every single new patient that comes through my door, I sit them down, I go through it tooth by tooth, just like we do it in dental school. And I think that's what really makes a difference is most times, whether it's private practice or DSO, a lot of the times the dentists just say, you know, here's what's going on here in your mouth, here's what you need. And they'll say, okay, go talk to the office manager, we'll figure out finances. But I think if you sit down with the patients and do it the way you're taught in dental school, or you form that connection, and you might only have 10, 15 minutes, whereas in dental school you have 2 hours to do a treatment plan presentation. You don't quite have that long, but I sit with my patients for probably about 15 to 20 minutes for each new patient. Say, you know, here, let's look at this tooth. Here's what a tooth looks like. Here's the outside of it. Here's the inside of it. Do you see the difference between a good tooth and a maybe not so good tooth? So when you sit there and educate your patients, you're really going to have quality patient care, and you don't have to worry about numbers or how well your office is doing because people are going to want to do their dental care with you. A lot of people ask me, they're like, you're so young and you're running this dental practice by yourself and it's so successful. What are you doing? What's your secret? And I'm like, just be a good person who's genuinely trying to help their patients. People they know if you're in it for the money versus if you genuinely care about them. And so I think if you carry that genuineness across and say, listen, I'm here to help you, and whether you have $100 or whether you have $10,000, let's do whatever works best for you to get you out of pain and make sure you're happy with your smile, people are really, really going to respond to that. So I don't have any secrets other than just being very genuine and treating them, you know, with respect. Don't ever say anything mean to a patient, and no matter how bad their mouth looks, never be judgmental, but just be there and say, listen, I understand life got in the way, so let's figure out what we can do for you today. And so I think that's really important in order to have a successful dental practice there. And then this last point here, I guess, goes across. Compensation varies, but it is competitive. I touched on that a little bit. The percentage of the bonus, I guess I can go into that a little bit more. Like I said, it's for an associate for Aspen, typically it's 6 to 10%, and that 6% versus the 10% is based on your patient satisfaction score. So based on your online reviews that you're getting, based on the reviews that they're just sending Aspen, period. So like I said, it's very important that you have a high patient satisfaction, because if you're, you know, doing a lot of dentistry but all your patients hate you, then you shouldn't be compensated very well because you're not being a good clinician. You're not being a holistic clinician. Whereas if you're a good clinician, your patient satisfaction scores are going to be pretty high. It's on a 5.0 scale, so just like, you know, if you're looking at a restaurant on whatever, Yelp or anything like that, if it's 4.0 or higher, typically you're going to go to the restaurant. Same thing, if you're getting about 4.0 or higher on your patient satisfaction, you're getting more of that 8 to 10% versus the 6 to 8% you would as an associate bonusing. 200, that's a very good salary, obviously. Depending on if you're an associate, I would say most associates at Aspen are making between 150 and 200. If you're the head dentist, you're making more around 200 to 300, depending on how your office is doing. If you own an Aspen, it's pretty, you know, sky's the limit there if you own multiple practices. My owner of my office, he owns, I think, 20 practices and makes like millions of dollars a year. So it's pretty insane what you can accomplish if that's really your goal. But starting as an associate, typically you're making between 150 and 200, but if your practice is doing very successfully and you're making a lot in bonuses, you can hit probably up to 250 even as an associate. So it's pretty competitive there as far as what you can be making in compared to other models of dentistry. Okay, next, fast pull.
In the interest of time, folks, I'm going to scoot us past the fast poll because I can see that you have a number of questions that you'd like to ask Dr. Niv, and I want to make sure that you have a chance to pose those to her. So if you'll excuse us for this particular skipping on past this one, I want to make sure we leave that sufficient time for those purposes. Does that sound okay, Dr. Niv?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Are you going to hit me with the questions now, or do you want me to continue with the slides?
Well, let's just touch on a few more of these slides, and then when we get to the discussion slide, I'll cue them all up, and we'll go through them in succession. Cool. There's a whole series that are coming in now across a number of topics. I think you're going to enjoy it. Cool.
I'm excited. Yeah, that's my favorite part is answering all the questions, so I'm excited for what you guys have to ask. All right, next slide, work-life balance. Like I said, that's really important to me. I will respond to work texts and emails on my drive home, and then after that, I don't unless you're a patient. So even if my regional manager or director has some really pressing questions, I tell them, listen, like you can't contact me because your whole life can't be consumed by dentistry. So make sure that you have a work-life balance or else you'll go crazy. All right, next, new technologies. I feel like we touched on this a little bit, but yeah, if you're in a DSO, typically you have more financial feasibility to buy new things like a cone beam or Wave 1 for all your dentists and things like that. So there's a perk, I suppose. Understanding the Aspen model. Okay, so I'm kind of scooting along these slides a little bit, but I'm on the Aspen's dental ownership track slide here.
We're right with you.
Okay, cool. It depends on what your goals are. There's nothing wrong with being an associate. You know, if you want to come to work your 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, whatever your Aspen hours are, go home, you know, play with your kids or your dog or your cat or whatever you got waiting for you at home. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that one of the things that people really push is this ownership thing, which I get why, you know, it's like the gold star in dentistry, but I think it takes away from people who want to be an associate. So if you want to be an associate, just know there's nothing wrong with that, and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. If you want to be an associate, awesome. If you want to be the head dentist, that's awesome too. And that was kind of where I, like I said, have felt that my fit is the best as of now. As of right now, I don't want to be an owner. What I want to do is pay off my student loans, kind of get my life moving a little bit more, you know, like married or something, you know, figure out my personal life a little bit, and then maybe buy a practice or own a practice. But I'm trying to just do it in stages, where I'm not taking on more than I can handle at the moment. So I wasn't quite happy being an associate because I think that I like having that control over an office and really setting the standards for my practice and saying, here's what I want, here's what I think is ethical, and here's how my practice is going to run. And then being an owner later on is something that I'm definitely looking forward to, but I don't have a clear picture as to when I would own an office, whether it's with Aspen or not with Aspen. But typically you'd start as an associate with Aspen, you'd move into a head dentist role, and then after that they would talk to you a little bit about ownership. Important questions to ask for any practice opportunity you're considering. We talked about, I feel like we touched on all these things already. So a summary, well, it's a great environment to flourish professionally. I can't say I disagree there, but like I said, every Aspen practice is different. You know, every doctor, every owner is different. So no matter what you've heard from my story, just remember it's my experience, and so you might walk into a different practice and have a completely different experience than anything you've heard me talk about. So whatever you do, just make sure you shadow in that practice, see the schedule, see how the patients are feeling, see how the staff is being treated and the doctors are being treated and things like that. And now I guess we can open up to questions or whatever else you've got in store for us.
That sounds fantastic. Thanks so much, Dr. Niv. Let's get into some of those questions from the audience. We appreciate you sharing your story with us. Everybody's got, I'm sure, some version of that story, and at the same time, it's completely unique to you, and we appreciated a chance to hear a little bit about that. Let's start with a question on mentorship. One of the first questions we received was, how did you get matched up, and are all mentors owner docs, or how does that process take place?
For sure. They typically match you with your mentor doc, with a doctor who's either in your practice with you or in a practice close to you. And so the idea there is that, you know, if you have a question on a treatment plan, or if you're not quite sure what to do with a procedure, whether you should do it, whether you should refer it, things like that, you want somebody in the same vicinity, whether it's in your same practice or within a nearby practice. So it's really based on locality, because I think that's the easiest way to make sure you have a strong mentorship. If you're mentored with somebody who's in a different time zone, sometimes it's hard to reach them when you really need them. And then what was the second half of that question, sorry?
Are all mentors owner docs?
No, they are not all owner docs, but they are typically at least the head dentist. So they've at least been out a few years and have run their practice for a year or two or even longer than that, or they are an owner doctor. So not always, but in a lot of cases they are, because they've just progressed pretty far in the Aspen model and end up being an owner doctor. My mentor at the time was purchasing her first office. So when she was my mentor, she hadn't quite had her first office yet. It was being built. So she was kind of in that transitionary phase. And they do kind of match you based on personality and things like that too. So you can kind of talk to your representatives or whoever you're speaking with Aspen. My mentor doctor was also pretty young. She was in her late 20s, fiery, bubbly, passionate. And so they said, you guys would probably get along well, Yeah. Not that I wouldn't get along with somebody who's not that demographic, but just based on who I am, they knew that we would be a good fit, and we were.
We actually met at one occasion, so I do know who you're referring to there. Let's talk about, in that same idea of relationships, how, if you're in one of those, if you're in a practice and you're not getting along really effectively with the owner doc, how easy is it to move inside that network? Are you stuck? How does that contract work? Are you able to have some flexibility there?
Yeah, I think you are. I can give you an example of one of my friends. She was also in Illinois, and she had a different owner doctor than I did. And the owner doctors kind of set the philosophy for their practice. You're still making your clinical decisions however you want, but sometimes your philosophy of the practice is influenced by the owner. For example, my friend, her practice owner doesn't really believe in root canals, and I know that kind of sounds funny, but he feels like if a patient comes in and they've got, a mouth that needs 4, 5, 6 root canals, they're not going to take care of all of that restorative work that you do. He's an older dentist. I think he's been jaded by what he's seen. He's just done so many root canals in his life, and so many of them have failed because the patients have not followed up with their care. So he'll do a beautiful root canal. He'll put a crown on it, then there's recurrent decay. The crowns are falling off. They're breaking because the patients aren't caring for the restorative work he did the same way they didn't care for the tooth in the first place. And so I can kind of understand if it's his perspective, but it's also a pretty extreme perspective, because I think that there's a lot of teeth that are very successfully treated with a root canal. So I personally disagree with that philosophy, because I do a lot of root canals and I think they are successful, but my friend had that problem too. So her owner doctor actually didn't have any endodontic systems in his office. So it's not like he told her you can never do a root canal, but because she didn't have the proper equipment to do a root canal, essentially she couldn't really do a root canal. So in that case, she did end up transferring. And so she, it was actually a pretty amicable split there. I think they both kind of understood they just had different ways that they wanted to practice dentistry. He knew that she was not a good fit for his practice because there was just some tension there, and she knew that she wanted to do root canals, and she disagreed with the idea of not doing any. And so I believe she transferred to a different Aspen practice, and I haven't followed up with her since, but I think she's been happy because she hasn't complained. So you can transfer is the point.
Gotcha. If you're a resident in the Bronx finishing up your GPR right now, this is one of our questions, and our attendee is finishing up in June of 28, maybe thinking about relocating to Kentucky after finishing the program. How early should we be looking at relocation? Is it too soon right now to think about that job in the new area? If you've got a June 2018 projected completion date, when should we be looking for that? Next?
No, I don't think it's too early. I think you should be looking now. I think you should get into contact with the representative in Kentucky. It's actually the recruiter there. I believe if you're in the region that I'm thinking in Kentucky, his name is Brian Howard Lewis. He's one of my favorite people. So whoever this person is in the Bronx, you're going to enjoy meeting this man. He's fantastic. But if that's your person, you can get in contact with him now, because you want to make sure you're not losing out on any opportunities. They will kind of hold a spot for you if you're for sure going to move to that area and for sure going to be in that office. One of my friends, she had a problem getting her dental license. It just took forever. She graduated in May and didn't get her actual license and her DEA and her NPI numbers until like September. And so The thing with Aspen is since she had already signed the contract, they weren't going to give that job away, but if you were in private practice, typically they're not going to wait that long for you when you're expected to start in June or July and you can't until September. So to the person in the Bronx, definitely go visit the Kentucky practice. Like I said, I'm really big on shadowing, so wherever you want to be with, if Brian is your recruiter, get in contact with Brian. Aspen will typically fly you out. Don't say that I'm promising this, but typically they will actually pay for your flight, have you stay at a hotel on their dime. They'll show you around the practice. You can take a look at the schedule, see if it matches up with things you want to be doing. But I would never say it's too early, because I think that really figuring out where you want to be, especially if you're making such a big move from the Bronx to Kentucky, just make sure that that's the right move for you as far as dentistry, but as far as life itself. You want to make sure you're in a place that's remotely going to resemble New York if you enjoyed New York, and you're not stuck in like the middle of Kentucky somewhere.
Do DSOs, does Aspen offer paid maternity leave?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually don't know. I don't have a child, so I don't know. But to that person, we can definitely follow up with them. Can they leave like contact information? I'm sorry I don't have the answer, but I can get back to them if we know who asked the question.
Absolutely, we can and we will.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
you.
That's fantastic. Next question was, I know you touched on this once previously, but if you could maybe echo it for some of our audience that perhaps missed it the first time. Have you ever felt pressure to perform certain procedures as by way of production goals, or are there any given production goals that you're encountering as an associate dentist?
As an associate, you're typically not. So there's this number called the budget, which I'm not sure why it's called the budget because it's not quite a budget, but there's this number that they want you to try to strive towards, and it changes month to month because dentistry changes month to month. For example, March, you'll learn, is a very good month for dentistry because everybody's getting their tax returns back. They really want to do their dental care. January is a good month too. Everybody's got New Year's resolutions. They want to go to the dentist and fix their smiles, whereas June and July are kind of dud months because everybody's on vacation. Nobody wants to go to the dentist in June or July. You want to go to, I don't know, the Caribbean or something. So there is a number that changes month to month and is different office to office. There's no repercussion if you don't hit this number. I will repeat that. There's no repercussion if you don't hit it. But I will also say I've never not hit the number even when I started, meaning that it's a pretty reasonable number. It's just a number for making sure that your office is able to actually pay off its electric bill, pay its employees, pay you. So it's just an idea just as far as the business goes, what you should be doing, but it's not something that's very hard to attain. Typically, my office will do quite a bit above that, and I, to be quite honest, don't even really care about what that number is because I've never worried about it. As long as you're doing what's right for the patient, your numbers are going to follow. And so there is a goal, but like I said, it's not like you're going to get in trouble if you don't hit that goal. They might try and figure out ways for you to hit that goal, meaning they're going to look at your metrics and say, why are you this far behind this goal? What can we do in this respect to help you hit this goal? Are you maybe speeding through your new patient exams? Why are they not accepting your treatment? Because remember that anybody who walks through the door wants to get treatment done. Their limiting factors are going to be money or fear. And so Aspen does have different sort of third-party financing options. I know that at my dental school we had Care Credit, and Aspen has Care Credit as well. So financial barriers typically we can overcome, at least to get some of their primary work done. But the main thing is, of course, the fear and why they're walking out without doing treatment with you. So that's something that if you're having a problem with that, maybe you're coming across a little too strong or you're trying to push treatment down people's throats, they'll work with you to figure out why these patients aren't accepting. So is there a number? Yes, but in my experience personally, I've never cared about it because you just do the right thing and your numbers will be fine.
That touches just on the number side. What type of metrics have you found most valuable, things that are helpful for you as a newer dentist getting into the flow and managing patient care? What type of numbers matter to you?
What type of numbers matters to me? That's a very good question. My patient satisfaction, I'd say, is my #1 metric. The way that Aspen does it is like I said, they look at your online reviews, but Aspen also has its internal satisfaction system. Every new patient gets an email that they can rank your office. They can rank how was the dentist, how was the front desk, how was this, how was that. So it actually is a very detailed survey, and so I'll go through it, and especially, me personally, if they had some problem with the dentist, then I'll go through and figure out, what I could be doing better. But sometimes they have an issue with the front desk. Maybe the explanation of the third-party financing wasn't solid enough, and they felt very confused walking out the door, because sometimes it's hard to understand. Care credit is not the easiest thing to understand, and so I'll have a conversation with my front desk and say, maybe you can word it a little differently. Maybe we can try using this phrasing so that the patients don't feel as confused. So patient satisfaction is my #1 metric that I look at, and I really delve into the intricacies of that. The other thing I like looking at is it shows you a percentage of what type of dentistry you're doing. So what % of your revenue so far that month has been dentures, how much of it has been dentistry, meaning, restorative prosthodontic, how much of it has been endodontics, how much of it has been oral surgery. And so you want to make sure, you've got a good mix. You're not too heavy on dentures. Maybe you're over treatment planning dentures. If over 60% of your revenue is dentures, maybe you're thinking a little more liberally as far as, extracting teeth instead of trying to save them. So I like looking at that just to make sure that my numbers are kind of more even across the board, and I'm not over treatment planning one thing or the other thing. Sometimes you get stuck in, a certain philosophy of dentistry, but it kind of shows you how your dentistry is going. What else do I like? There's a whole entire metrics page, so it's interesting to see what your daily reports look like. So it'll show you what patients fell off the schedule, what patients got added on to the schedule. It's very, very detailed. It took me almost like half a year just to learn the metrics page, because there's anything you could possibly think of is on that metrics page as far as how your business is running.
That's great. There's just a couple more that I think, if you
Sure.
wouldn't mind. Is there a place that you turn to as a resource when you were thinking about the interview process as a way to kind of ramp up and prepare for the interviews you had, either in private practice or as you were considering a DSO-supported opportunity? Was there some place you turned to for kind of like interview prep?
That's a good question. I actually didn't interview because, like I said, I was pretty heavily involved in ASDA, so I knew a lot of the either private practice or I knew the Aspen representatives, and so I never had a formal interview with any person. I just kind of had a phone conversation with them. But as far as resources, that's a great question. I would see if your school has anything, because I know my school actually had interview preparation lectures. They weren't actual lectures, but more of like a lunch and learn type of a lecture. I know that ASDA does. Our ASDA organization did have an interview preparation lunch and learn that they did, and so you actually got to practice some questions and figure out what you can and what you can ask and what you shouldn't ask. And there's actually an interesting ASDA blog article on illegal interview questions. So they can't ask you things like, are you pregnant? So for whoever asks about the maternity leave, I don't think that they're legally allowed to ask you things like that. So it's important to kind of look through that and figure out what your interview preparation resources are available, but really I think that you should be interviewing them just as much as they interview you. So you should come in with a lot of questions. I know that they say that for college and for dental school, but I think when you're interviewing for an actual dental practice, you need to be interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. I would ask to talk to the staff. I would ask to talk to a dental assistant and just kind of pull them aside and not even have formal questions, but just say, like, what do you love about working here? What do you think could be better? You know, if you had a new doctor come in, what is your top thing that you want them to do? You know, and they might just say, like, please be nice to me, you know, things like that. But it just kind of gives you a sense of what the practice culture is like. So I'm sorry I don't have an answer exactly for interview preparation resources, but maybe check out your local ASDA organization and see what they can do for you.
Sounds like a great topic for a future webinar as well.
There you go, yeah.
Okay, we're going to close on just one more then, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Let's just talk about lab fees for a quick moment. Are lab fees something that's deducted from your salary, or does the practice, how does that cost get borne by the office?
Okay, yeah, so that's a great question. So for Aspen, every office has an on-site lab for your removable prosthetics. So we make our dentures on site and we make our immediate partials on site, but we don't have anything to solder the cast. So our cast metal partials and our Valplast or Flexi-Lite partials, those are sent out to, I think they're sent out to a few different labs, but you've got the option to send it to a few different labs that Aspen is, I guess, contracted with, or I don't know if they're contracted with them, but they just go in and make sure that they're regulated the way they need to be. There's like 5 or 6 different labs you can choose from. You can call the labs, talk to the people. They're all located, I think, somewhere in this country, but you can call them and ask. And it's not subtracted from your salary at all. It is deducted from your overall office's expenses. So whatever you've produced that month minus the expenses, it goes into that expenses number. And remember, your bonus comes from that net profit. So I'll say that again. Your production is, say you produced $200,000 that month. Your office did $200,000, and you had, just to make it easy, $100,000 in expenses. That would include your lab fees there. So sometimes you need to, your patient's going out of the country, you need to overnight a crown, then that is included in your expenses there, including the extra shipping costs and things like that. But it's never deducted from your salary, your base salary. But if your lab fees are very, very expensive, it can affect your bonus because it's being subtracted from the expenses portion of that. I hope that makes sense. I know it's kind of hard to visualize.
Oh, that was a very insightful answer. I thought you answered it very effectively. And on that note, Dr. Niv, I think we're going to say thank you so much for your time tonight. We really appreciated the chance to get to know you personally and to hear some of your professional experiences. And your attendees have been sending very nice notes, and they would continue to ask you questions until you'd be looking at Friday and the first patient's on the day and your morning huddle would be late. So we're going to say,
my office isn't working, so I might as well be doing this. We still don't have an air compressor that's functioning. So no, if you guys have any other questions, though, you can feel free to find me on Facebook, or if you want to write down my email address, I can give that too. It's my full first name I can spell it for you. It's niveditha@gmail.com. So it's niveditha@gmail.com. Or you can contact Rich probably, and he'll give you my email address or anything like that too. I know there's a ton of questions you guys probably have, so if you want to connect offline, feel free to reach out.
I'm going to post it right here in the chat window for those of you who are interested. Thank you so much, Dr. Niv, for making that available. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you all for your attendance, and appreciate your stopping by to check out part 2 of the 4-part series. Part 3 will be underway in just another week or two, and we hope you'll join us for that conversation as well. We will be talking about student debt. Not to say that that happens to any of you, but if you just so happen to be carrying some student loans, we will be talking a little bit about how you might be able to hit the ground running and manage those things as you start to finish your way in school and transition into practice like Dr. Niv has and shared with us tonight. So on behalf of everybody at the next CDS, on behalf of our fantastic and gracious speaker, and certainly for our friends at Aspen Dental who helped make this available, we thank you for your attendance and your interest tonight, and we certainly hope you have a great rest of your evening. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye.